We are moving very well with our task force. I'm happy that everyone. You can hear me, Sarah?
Yes, I can hear.
And we see on track. For today, as I understand, from the last discussion, we will hear today from Kirdi with regard to how we can approach stakeholder consultations. And without further ado, maybe we will hand it to Sarah to take us through the good presentation she sent us yesterday. So Sarah, over to you. Sarah, whenever you're ready, you can start.
I'm trying to share the screen. Huh?
Okay, take your time. Take your time. It's okay.
Yes.
Now we can see your emails.
And hello. Hello. Hello, Geoffrey.
Hi, Sarah. Yes, hi.
Yes.
Yes, I think I'm having I'm struggling to share the screen.
Sure.
You want I share for you?
Yes, if you can.
Thank you, Dr. Otoma. Please do.
I'm struggling to share this.
So, Sarah, is this the one?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, then you'll be prompting me,
Yes.
to move maybe to the next slide or back. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. So, good morning to the group. Morning to you, people.
Yeah, good morning, Sarah. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. So, I'm Sarah Kwach from Kirdi. And Kirdi is taking up the second deliverable in the work plan, that is the stakeholders consultation. So today, actually, this is not the final output for this part. What we are going to do today is just to plan together for the main activity. So I'm together with Humphrey Madede. I'll be presenting part of the work and he'll finish up in the last bit. So the proposed activities in this section is mapping of stakeholders, whereby we need to identify the stakeholders. Then we are going to move to key informant interview guide. So it is just a guide whereby we shall be setting our objectives. We need to set our objectives, which will help us come up with the questionnaire. Then from there, we'll go to the field to collect data, to data analysis, and the final output should be report writing in this second. Move on, Daktari. Second slide, kindly. So before we start this section, we really need to know the people that we are going to be involved with. We need to answer the three questions: who, why, and how we are going to do it. So who are the stakeholders that we are going to have as part of the team? So a stakeholder is any person or group who has an interest in the project or could potentially be affected by the output of maybe the policy that we are going to come up with. So we need to identify these people. We need to know them. Second slide, kindly. And why are we involving the stakeholders? Why couldn't we just move to the second section of like we have the report, benchmarking report, then we write our final policy? We need these people so that they are the people who are going to be affected. So we need to create a working relationship with them. We need to bring confidence that whatever we are doing will have an impact in their lives. Then for communication channel, for this section will help us identify potential issues, conflicts, and benefits that we are likely to get, and that will help us develop the final document. And this part is very important because we need to generate new ideas. We are not just going to rely on the theoretical aspect, the knowledge that we've gotten from the books or people who have written. We need to verify them on the ground. So we need to generate new ideas from them. It should come from them. Then there's the formal partnership. Like I presume, after this exercise, NACOSTI should be working together with the Ministry of Energy to come up with the final document. So there's that need of formal partnership and other good advantages. Let's move into the next one. Next slide. So how are we going to identify the stakeholders? So basically, I used the power interest matrix analysis to try to come up with a bit of the stakeholders that we are likely to involve. And we are also using the Johari's window. In Johari's window, we want to check on people who have got very high influence and should be very involved in the exercise. So these are very key people in the process that we need to identify. We need to inform them about what we are doing. Then there's the group that they have very high interest and very high power. They are the same people who have got high influence and should be involved. Then there's the group of high influence and low involvement. These people, they should be kept satisfied. There are people who have power, but then the interest may be very low. So who are this group? We need to identify them. And the low influence and high involving people who should be involved, but influence, it's very less. So this is a group of people we need to keep them informed. So who are these people that we need to have them informed? They should know about what we are doing. Next slide, Kai. So from that analysis, I came up with this group of stakeholders. One is government, which we know very well has got very high interest in the high power. So in this guideline and plan, you know, this is a draft, and I think after this presentation, we should be able to refine everything and come up with the final number of stakeholders we need. So I was thinking, like, if you have like 5 stakeholders in the government, the central government, and maybe 5 from the county officials, then we have the utilities. Under utilities, we have the private and the government. So we need to identify the people that we are going to reach up to. The next slide. Then we have the institutions. We have the institutions and the financial institutions, the people which are supporting the solar uptake in the country. We need to know what is really there. How are they supporting the market? Next slide. So basically, our main focus is also in the household. We should really know why, like, the uptake of solar systems are not so much in the rural areas. And I'm thinking of like we should check on like 10 people, 10 households for this study. Then we have the businesses, the people who are developing the solar in the market, the installation companies, we have the manufacturers, we have even the technicians, the installers. So these are people who will, okay, they have low power, but they are very interested in their businesses and basically even for profit. So I'm thinking of like we should have like 10 of them, but this one will be depend on the amount of resources that we have and time. So we should be able to come up with the actual numbers of stakeholders in this section. So this is just a draft. I was just imagining what should happen. It's not the final. So we have the institution researchers, people who are basically on the capacity building issues. We need to involve them. We need to know how much they've achieved so far. Yes, so 5 of them, I think won't be bad if we visit and interview the group. Then we have the NGOs and other associations. Hello, next step. The next slide. So the last question that we need to answer is how are we going to do this? So I'm trying to do so far so that we get into the objectives, because that is the core of today's, and we need to define it. So communication would be very important, because if you don't communicate with them, they won't be able to know our intention. They want to know what we are up to, and we won't be able to know like what are the challenges in the on the ground that we need to solve. So in this group, we need to come up with a strategy and proper plan. And basically, we need to plan with the stakeholders. So we need to know that even as we are going to carry out this study, we need to know how to communicate so well. Next slide. So these are the modes of communication that we'll be using. Some we started using, like formal reports. You saw Dr. Amolo forwarded the report. So we got the report. We are working with it. Pre-recorded, you've seen online discussion. We should also think of venturing into those ones, more so like we're in the initial stages. We have live speeches. These are possible means of communication face-to-face. Most when we'll be going to the field, we are likely to face the people and do some observation on what is on the ground. We are going to use telephone conversations and many other, even letters where necessary. So these are things that we should know, that which one should we use at what time and with which group of people, because we are going to deal with various people, and the way we are going to communicate with them also matters. Yes, you know, we have like the government, when we are going to take this information to them that this is our intention, should we just call them and that is enough, or should we go and discuss? So these are the modes of communication that I'm proposing that we use. Next slide. So this is the key of today's meeting that I think we should come up with and agree so well on how we are, on which ones we are going to achieve. So to me, I think whatever the objective that we are going to set will help us derive the questionnaires. So it has to be very smart. Smart to mean it has to be specific. It has to be measurable, that is within the qualitatively, and even quantitatively you have to check on those. It has to be achievable, like what I've said. Do you think they are going to be achievable, and what is the scope? So realistic and timely. We are going to check like we are going to achieve this objective within what time. So we need to agree, and we need to have this in mind, that whatever we are going to do today, whatever we are going to refine today, should be something that is working within a lot of many factors. Next slide. So how do we set our objective right? The first step is to get into the areas of interest. We need to know our area of interest so well and what do we want to achieve. I know there are very many challenges on the ground, but then to what is our scope of work? So that's something that we should come up with so well in this group, in this meeting, so that we are able to finalize. So we are going to check different aspects from the household level and business level. And this one, I just started thinking in that line, but this is a draft. So I believe you are going to, the team is going to guide us to refine the document. Next slide. So I was just trying, we were just trying to imagine how to come up with the objective, a draft objective. So we thought of like going back to the findings from the benchmarking. And I know we are dealing with many doctors, people who are marking theses. The moment somebody wants to come up with a technology, the first step is normally to check on like, what is the problem on the ground? So we went and checked on like from the report, what are the challenges mentioned? So we decided to group it into 4 main categories because the challenges were so many and at times it's very difficult to set objectives just from nowhere. We need to know like we are working on what basis. So we decided to group it into 4. The first one is socio-technical barriers. We need to know, are we intending to solve the problem in the socio-technical, the problems covering that area? This refers to the technological resource base and basically the environment, the climatic conditions in the country, what is there, and social barriers. We have the economic, financial barriers. This one now refers to the market and now like the cost. Why is people not really uptaking the technology? What is the challenges? Could it be because of the high cost? So we need to know that, is this that is suitable for us to solve in this meeting? The finances, are the finances available for the people involved, the stakeholders? So we need to go to the field and really verify, okay, we've gotten the information from the theory, from the books, but we need to verify on the ground what they have at hand. Yes, so we have the policy and regulatory factors. We have some existing ones. We need to really identify those policies and check on their strength. If possible, we should do the SWOT analysis of those policies and come up with the final thing that can solve a certain area in that area. Then we have the cross-cutting barriers. This one now, we were talking about the gender mainstreaming, that we realize that is also a challenge. The institutions and information, we need to know like the institutions that we have, what are they offering in terms of knowledge and skills? So we realize that in the document, that is a barrier, a big challenge. So having known the problem of statement, now from there, you recommend. So as what we are going to do probably is just to do proper recommendation for the government to at least solve some of these problems. So let's move to the next slide. So we tried to brainstorm on a few approaches, including the recommendations that were given in the benchmarking report. So like we were asking, if you have the technical and environmental barriers, so how can we approach it? So the solution would be, let's access the technology and check the infrastructure necessary to support the solar PV technology's uptake. Then now what we should do again, we have to go and check whether there is enough data on solar energy resources. Are they there? For the people who would want to invest in solar in Kenya, are they able to get access to this information? Because when you're designing solar, you really have to have such kind of information. Are they there so that anybody who is intending to invest will just get it without now taking the pyrometers and going to the field to start knowing like the availability of the resources we have? Or should we just assume that Kenya is located within the equator and it has adequate solar? We know very well that Kenya has got very many places, counties. What are the locations? There are some places with enough solar, there are some without solar. Why don't we know like which area is receiving what amount of solar? So in this baseline survey, I think we should really check on what is on the ground. The department that is concerned with climate, are they really collecting adequate data? I remember like when we were carrying out a project in Kirdi, in Mombasa, the donors asked us for the weather, the climatic condition of those things, the data. We were not able to get them. And so they were doubting like whatever the report we gave them was not going to help them in designing. So I think we need to go and check what is on the ground concerning that. Then establish solar PV distribution and servicing company. You find that when you go to the rural sector, many people are not willing to really buy the solar technology. They are doubting it. Why? Could it be because of maintenance services? Maybe they are not on the ground. Maybe the people who are supplying the services are in Nairobi and now the system is spoiled in the village. What should we do in this group? We need to go and check. We need to go and check whether the infrastructure is around across the country, and whether there are trained personnel within those places. Yes. Then, so from this one, having come up with these recommendations, it is out of these recommendations that we should know, like now, what are our objectives? So having come up with this one, the recommendations, now we were just starting to think in this line, like now, what are the actual activities that we should go? What objectives should we really set in this area? So we came up with like 2 to obtain data on availability of solar energy resources in the country. I must tell you that the objectives is a bit loaded, and I'll request the team we refine it so that it's shorter. This is just to guide us on some of the questions we'll be asking. So these are should not be the final objectives. So we have to assess the designs and performance of solar. We need to go and check like the solar technologies that are there. Or what are the challenges? What are the performances? Who are installing the systems? Because so far from information that I have, we know we have some electricians who are there, but they don't have the background information on solar technology, the installation. They don't know that even a small shade can affect the performance of the system. And for the household businesses, we have to check like the roof orientation that we have, most homes have in country, and report. We have the space, reliability for the household, but then for the business, you can find that maybe it is the types of buildings that is affecting the performance of these systems. That's why many businesses are not willing to invest on the system. Could be the space. Maybe the cost of the system is getting increased because of the space. They have to buy land for installing the systems, such kind of things. So far in that area, that is what we had, what we thought we could do. We could check when we go to the field. Next slide. The next slide. So in the policy regulatory factors, we think like we should provide an enabling environment with stable and predictable policy support for the expansion of solar PV technologies and increase the interest of investors. So how can we do this when we are developing our policy? We should ensure that there is clarity in the roles and functions of the various institutions involved in the solar sector, increasing the role of the private sector. So we need to check whether they are already involved. Then the government should develop self-consumption policy framework that will be favorable for adoption of solar for household and businesses. So this was a recommendation from the report. We need to know, we need to go and identify like what policies are based on like these ones, household and businesses, what is there for them. The national and county government should work together to integrate national and county policy framework on solar energy. So we were thinking that why don't we go to the county governments and check what they have on solar policies? Are they developing some policies at that level? Then from there we can integrate them with what the central government is providing. So in our objective, we should go and identify those policies and check on what is on the ground, determine the effectiveness of the current policies in achieving the following objective, like now, like we're talking about private sector participation and the inclusion of women. Then we have like the procedure, licensing procedure, what is there, so that we recommend in our final document. Objectives like supporting the growth and development of small businesses and households. So objectives should capture those ones. Promoting capacity building, research and innovation. What is there on the ground? Which policies are covering research and innovation in the country, so that we know at least the next step to take. Then we have to check the fit, what is there, and net metering policies that we have. So let's move into the next one. So the barriers, economic and financial and market barriers, basically we are thinking like what is important is stimulate the economic development that area. So how do you bring or increase the economic development in the country? By establishing appropriate financing and policy framework that will attract more investment on solar. So because this area we are talking about affordability and financing, we also need to encourage the government and the current businesses that are there not to really depend on the donor grants in order to implement solar systems. So we need to know why they've not been just investing on solar in terms of the economics of the market. So we should also develop financing schemes. So what should we do in our objective is to go and identify like what are the funding sources, instruments and mechanisms available for solar projects and companies. You know, we can't just recommend what we don't know. So we need to go and go to the field and verify, note, and know even the merits and demerits of those financing instruments. We need to characterize the different solar PV market segments, like what are the applications, which capacity of solar is being used for this, something like that, to identify the types of business models for domestic solar energy development. Then, because we are under this, we are also talking about the cost of solar PV systems. So we are going to check on the incentives that can promote local manufacturing, or which can make maybe importation of solar to be a bit cheap, so that the capital cost of solar systems are not very high. We need to promote appropriate research and innovation in the country. Local production is very important for us to reduce the cost of solar system. So we are talking about reducing the cost. We are talking about the local industries. Are they there? At what cost are these systems being sold or supplied? So we need to determine the cost and the pricing of those systems before we really recommend to the government what is necessary. We need to identify the local industries that are producing solar PV in the systems. And actually, they need to give us new ideas on how we can improve to at least help in the development of the industry. We need to identify the institutions carrying out research and innovation on solar technology. Yes, people are doing research, but then which ones are really just on working on the solar technology? Then assess the capacity of the country to produce the solar PV locally. Do we have adequate locally available materials to help us reduce the cost? Do you have the capacity? Those are some of the questions that we need to go to the field and check, so that when we are recommending, so that it's not just a document that is theoretical, we need to report on something that is possible, not something that we are just imagining that, okay, we can produce solar in Kenya. So what are the channels of achieving that objective? Those are things that we don't need to go and note on this in the survey. So these are a bit loaded. Well, I know after this we are going to refine so that we have few objectives. Let's move into the next slide. Then the last group is cross-cutting barriers. So in this case, we are saying like we need to enhance the capacity building of actors in the value chain. But then how can you really enhance capacity if you really don't know what is on the ground? We need to know like what is the operation, what is the coordination between the solar energy industry and the education research institutions. Are they well integrated, or the institutions, the research centers are just doing research and they're stopping at that point? Are those technologies being transferred to the market? What are the challenges? So we need to go and evaluate the solar power skills and knowledge in the market. We need to incorporate solar PV education into the curricula, which means we really need to go to those institutions and check what they have. Do you have those courses, first of all? So we need to go and identify, check what is on the ground. So government should also adopt policies in support of value chain development, including incubation of new businesses. So these are like recommendations that we should give to the government, but only after knowing what is on the ground. So that is why we are going to go to the basic, we are going for this study, and we need to refine our objective so well. So these are so far the few proposed objectives that we had worked on as KIRDI, and we believe after this one, the team will guide us. So because I've tackled this one, I think you should also hear from Mr. Lumadede. Let's move into the next stage. Mr. Lumadede can take up this next section so that you can hear from him. Lumadede. I'm free. Hello.
Unmute. Please unmute. Unmute your microphone. Move closer to your microphone. We cannot hear you.
It looks like he's no longer. Now he's talking, but we can't hear him.
That's true. You're not. We can't hear you.
Sarah can speak for you.
Yeah, I think Sarah can just go.
Okay.
Sarah,
So,
please
hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
So can I proceed?
Please
Yes,
do, Sarah.
I think so.
Finish.
Yes. So we are thinking of like carrying out this exercise, this activity in 3 phases, whereby we should have the first phase. This is for planning. Basically, planning, we are proposing to have like a maximum of 3 weeks. We propose this considering various factors like the number of people to be contacted and their response time. You know, some are likely to take time to give us feedback. And then we have the resources available. This one, maybe Nakosti will be able to tell us whether we will be able to get that one. Then the second one is we need to have some workshop initial workshop for the stakeholders, at least to create awareness of our objective and basically to generate new ideas. The new ideas may help us even maybe expound on our scope to know what we really want. So the second phase would be data collection, whereby we'll have to develop questionnaires, structured ones, and up to data collection should take like 6 weeks. And this one now, the factors I'm considering is point of development of tools, the facilitation process for the funds. I don't know the structure of NACOSTI, how they process for funds up to the time people are going to the field. So approximately I was giving like 6 months, 6 weeks. Then we are still going to use the literature review in this part to strengthen some points. So we'll go to the field, key informant interviews will be carried out, and administering of questionnaires. Then the third phase, which is now the data analysis and report writing, that is like 5 weeks. This one will basically depend on the volume of data collected, the time of data entry, and analysis now will depend on our efficiency. So we are going to use SPPS or Microsoft Excel for our analysis. Next stage. So we decided to come up with an overview of activities and plans that is now taking up to around 12 weeks. So the entire process, we tend to think should take like 12 weeks. That is averagely 3 months from identification of stakeholders up to report writing. It should take us around 12 weeks. So the activities, as we had started identifying the stakeholders and contact persons, we have communication, from communication, writing of letters. It should take like 3 weeks, as I had stated. And the output would be like how many stakeholders should we have identified by the next 3 weeks. So we need to know. Then we have the data collection, as I mentioned. We are going to develop questionnaires, baseline, and questionnaires and checklists. Those ones we are going to do. So in the planning, we need to know the group that is going to do what. We know Kiri is going to lead, yes, in this section, but then we need more hands. Development of questionnaires will be grouped according to the problems. So which group will check which questions to ask or which objective to achieve. Then the final, which is the data analysis and writing, we think, as I mentioned, should take around 5 weeks. So this one has just depicted the 3 phases that I've mentioned. So far, that is what we have for this section. Otherwise, the entire process will depend on many factors. If we set our objectives well, or if we say we have funds in time, I think that is what is expected of us in this planning process. Thank you. That's what I have.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for the elaborate presentation. It is really very elaborate. It's enough for us to deliberate on. I like the way you've organized it in terms of the questions: who, why, and how. So if I paraphrase you, who is people will be talking to? Who should we talk to for the stakeholders? Why? What are the objectives we have so that we can go out there and talk to people? And how do we go about it? And if I understood you correctly, you wanted us to focus more on the why, on the objectives, to refine the objectives today. Is that how you'd like? Is that how you see it, Sarah? That we can focus more on the discussion of the objectives?
Yes, Geoffrey. It will guide us to develop the questionnaire, and we'll know what you want, our scope of work.
Thank you very much. Understood. So maybe to allow deliberations and comments, maybe we can just go around and open up for comments. So Sora, you may wish then to check the comments you receive and provide any clarifications people have. But let's open up and then let's hear from everyone with regard to their opinions and more so on the objectives. How can we make these objectives leaner and smarter so that we can be able to be more efficient in the work? Where do we focus our efforts more is the question here. So I'll open up the floor for everyone else to give their comments. Let's try and keep them brief and to the point.
Okay, well, good morning, team, and I hope you're hearing me, yeah, Jeffrey?
Yes, please proceed, Doctor. Please proceed.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thank you so much, team, and good morning, and thank you, Sarah, for the detailed and very elaborate presentation. I think it's a very good roadmap on where we want to go. However, I find it quite loaded, and as a matter of fact, we need to narrow down to what is achievable within the period of time that we have. I was thinking, Chair, if we can be guided section after section, I think it would be better for us to be a bit more focused because it's a range of issues that we need to focus on. Probably we can narrow down to the various barriers she identified in the objectives, and then we deal with each one of them, comment about each one of them. It may be faster and more focused for us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. White. I also find that okay. I find that we could, because there are 4 of them, we could go one by one and try and raise questions or concerns around each one of them. Is that in order, or is there a different point of view? So I will assume silence to mean that we're all in concurrence. So if you could pull up again the objectives, starting with the technical, socio-technical, that's what Sarah called it, and we could just have comments from people on that one. What specific objectives shall we try and aim for? A number, I don't know whether 3, 4, or 2, or how many would be sufficient so that we can drill down on that one only.
Chair.
Yes, Dr. Tom.
Okay, you had asked if there's a different opinion. I'm not sure if everybody, because it would have been good to get an input from everybody. And then after we have an input from everybody, you may conclude. Otherwise, I was of the opinion that because I went through it, and there are some things which I think we may first clarify in the report itself. And then after we've clarified them, we can now go to where you are taking us. But that is after everybody has given their input. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. So you're of the view that some people have already gone through it and have comments ready, and they would like to provide those comments already. Did I understand you correctly there, Dr. Thomas, that we can actually just have people giving their comments first?
Correct, Chair, because we are supposed to be working on this, all of us, much as Kirdi is leading the way. Just like in the first deliverable, Dr. Amolo was leading the way, but we all had some inputs before she did the final one. Even this one, ideally, we should all give some inputs, and then after that, we may come to the position you are suggesting. But that is if people went through what she shared, and if people are collaborating with Kirdi. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well understood. Then we could have a few more comments from everyone else opinions as to how to tackle this? Please, the floor is open.
Thank you, Chair. Could I go?
Please do. You may go ahead. Someone, engineer, we can't hear you. Engineer, I cannot hear you. Can anyone else hear him?
No, I can't hear him.
Hi, Chair.
Now we can hear you. Please proceed, Engineer Haga.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much, Sarah, for this detailed report. I just have some comments, and this is, I think, general to all membership. There's one question I've been asking, and from the beginning, and this is on the scope. When you talk about household and when you talk about businesses, from power system point of view, there's a way they are categorized. And when you talk about household, it is measured in terms of how much units are you able to produce, are you able to consume. Again, when you talk about businesses, there are small, medium enterprises that define businesses, and there are industrial businesses. So I think that is a question that I've never gotten an answer, and I think it will define even the way we define our stakeholders. Because from the list of stakeholders, I've seen some enterprises like Endasol power solar plant, which is producing 40 megawatts, 120 megawatts. And I wasn't too sure whether those are the kind of stakeholders that you want to deal with when we are talking about household and businesses. So I think we need to get that definition right so that we can contribute very effectively even as we move towards this stakeholder engagement. That was my first comment. And again, on the same, there was some issues to do with FIT. FIT being mixed again with net metering. I think we need to clarify that also. FIT and the net metering being mixed together. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Engineer Waga, for those comments. Let's take a few more comments from anyone else, and then we can clarify everything once we have received comments from everyone else.
Chair.
Yes, Dr. Soma.
While people are still warming up their minds on what to comment on, I would like to take over, continue from where Engineer Eric Ohaga has brought us. So, for example, if I start with FIT, that is the feed-in tariff. This is the slide is on the page. I think is commenting within that in Sarah's presentation, she explained that we need to establish a feed-in tariff for mini and microgrids through net metering. Now, the way I understand, and since engineer is present here and other people in power, the way I do understand is that, for example, if I have a house and I'm using less than 1 megawatt, feed-in tariff does not arise. What arises is the net metering aspect. FIT arises if, let's say, I'm producing more than 1 megawatt, and then I intend to sell that 1 megawatt to, let's say, Kenya Power, but I may be corrected by engineer and our other colleagues in power who may understand this better than I, but this is how I understand it from the policy aspect, that feed-in tariff applies for above 1 megawatt, and below 1 megawatt, the net metering is what is yet to be in place, although the policy or the spirit is there, but the action is not yet. And then his initial issue about us identifying our stakeholders, because he says he's been asking this question and we have not given an answer. Maybe it would be good for us to define in our scope who are houses, because we know solar power for houses, and who are businesses. Businesses, are they like, for example, if you've been to Kamkunji in Eastlands, you've seen the Juakali people. You may find a person is doing his Juakali business from literally a socket of 240 volts. So such a person is, you may not compare that person, let's say, if you went to industrial area, again in Eastlands, and you found, let's say, BAT, for example, the manufacturers of tobacco. Those ones, they're not operating their factory from a socket of 240 volts. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Toma. And maybe just to provide a framework for how to separate this, my thoughts here are that when you look at households versus businesses, we should concern ourselves with what is the energy being used for. If the energy is being used in a domestic application, so for lighting, for cooling, for any domestic use, then that would be the right or the one of the ways to define that as a domestic application, because the policy incentives for such a setting is different from, for example, a business one, which in this case, energy is being used to generate some income or to progress some economic activity, you know. So maybe that is one way you could look at it. I see, of course, sometimes these two are mixed. You go to a household where the same household is pumping water and planting some vegetables for sale. So there may be areas where there is an overlap, but that could be one way of separating them in terms of function. How is the energy being used for? And the other one is on the feed and then metering. Indeed, you're right. Feed is for power plants which are primarily for selling energy to the grid or whoever, someone else. And net metering is for we call them prosumers, someone who is producing energy and using it, but in a way has got some excess energy for sale, available for sale to the grid or for banking in the grid. So again, it's a question of what is the primary purpose of the power plant? What was the power plant set up for? If it was set up for own use, then typically you see net metering there being applicable. If it was set up just for sale to the grid or to a third party, then there you find feed-in tariffs being applicable. I hope my comments clarify that. Do we have any other comments on those issues raised by Engineer Haga, or also on the presentation by Sarah?
Can I go, Chair?
Yes.
Yes, I just want to make some clarification on this feed-in tariff and the way it is written here. Establish a feed-in tariff for mini and microgrids through net metering. That is, it is the way, if you read it the way it is there, it's confusing.
Yes, it needs to be.
Feed-in tariff. Feed-in tariff means you produce and sell. And also when you produce, there's something called captive power, that power that you consume even within that plant. And then the rest you sell. And for the feed-in tariff that we have, and I shared this document with us, I think sometimes back on the feed-in tariffs of 2012. So feed-in tariffs, the policy that we have currently starts from 500 kilowatt. It is from 500 kilowatt to 10,000 kilowatt. That is what covers the feed-in tariff. So you produce as a generator and then you sell to the grid through that feed-in tariff. And it's available even for the mini grids and the microgrids that are available currently in the country. For the net metering, we are saying it's under 1,000 kilowatt. That's one under 1 megawatt. And you're also producing from the household. You use what you use, and then the rest you export to the grid. And you cannot go beyond 1,000 kilowatts. For feed-in tariff, it starts from 500 kilowatt, it goes up to 10,000 kilowatts. For net metering, it is between 0 and 1,000 kilowatt. And so for mini and micro is already covered under feed-in tariff, because you find some are within 500 kilowatts, some are 600 kilowatts, and therefore they are able to sell to the grid through that arrangement. So then when we come to the scope, and I want to agree with the contribution from members, household basically is for domestic use. And when you go to businesses, you are using that business for commercial purposes. And therefore, you are either powering that business for commercial purposes, or you are powering your home for your own domestic use. And now when you talk about these businesses, basically, and I recognize what Dr. Ari said about an example from Rogosho or even Kariobangi with those kind of appliances. They will never, for small medium enterprises, and I think this is what we are talking about here when you talk about businesses, those fall within the small medium enterprises. And in terms of their consumption, I would suggest that we use the energy consumption to be able to categorize this domestic and the businesses. Now for the businesses, when you talk about 100 kilowatt hours to about 15,000 kilowatt hours consumption per month, then that would be able to define this category of the businesses that we are talking about. And then domestic, or rather household, is anything below 100, and that is a normal domestic usage. Anything below 100 kilowatts a month would fall within that category of the houses. So you're producing from your house, you're able to take care of 100 kilowatt hours per month, and you have excess, and you're able to sell it to the utility. For the case of the businesses, you're operating within under 15,000 kilowatt hours per month, and you have your captive power that you consume, and you have excess that you're able to export to the grid, and then you get your net metering under that arrangement. Because now when you start going beyond 1,000 megawatts, then that is taken care of by the feed-in tariff, and that's the reason why I was making reference to this Malindi solar project, and even Radiant solar project, and Endasol, which are big power plants, and they are feeding into the national grid, so they don't fall within this scope which we are talking about. Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Thank you very much, Nchinoaga. That is makes it very clear. So you are advocating for also using system size or power consumption in kilowatts as also one way of defining this. Maybe also, you seem very knowledgeable on these things. Maybe it would be worthwhile if you could document and share with the committee some of these things, so that we can include them in the report. So if you're kind enough, I'll kindly ask you to spare some time just to put your thoughts down and share on paper. I see someone else is putting up their hand.
Yes, Chair. That is my director, who's in charge of scheduled sciences. Actually, I report to him, and we are very lucky today. He came to our meeting, just like last time. The Director General himself came to our meeting, and now that he's there, these bits of what we may do in phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, I would like him to comment, because what he says is heavier than what I would say. That's Dr. Roy B. Mugira. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Daktari Otuoma and colleagues. Once again, good morning. Roy Mugira is my name, the director in charge of scheduled sciences at NACOSTI. I'm happy to join this discussion. I have had the presentation, reasonably technical output, which I was following with keen interest. What I would like to say is the role of NACOSTI in advisory services, in advising on matters, science and technology, reflects very well when you talk about regulatory processes for off-grid, this kind of power generation, utilization, and commercialization. So we are happy to see this committee go on. I want to congratulate or support my colleague, Dr. Otuoma, who is also an expert in this area, in bringing together this committee and forward-looking, supported from by CRIDI, of course, the Industrial Research Institute that is spearheading this. Now, having said that, I look through the phases that Dr. Otuoma has referred to, the preparatory and planning phase, maximum of about 3 weeks, the data collection, and then the data analysis and the report writing. We would be happy, of course, currently we are in a situation where we aren't able to do a lot of outside activities due to the confinement measures that we are taking as a result of COVID-19. But I would like to encourage you to keep planning for these 3 phases, because I think they are important, particularly the phase 3, which will depend on 1 and 2, where you will analyze the data and come up with a report, out of which we can generate policy advice that will advise government and regulatory systems for this kind of power generation, use, and commercialization. So I want to encourage you to continue. I may not stay long in the meeting. I have something else to attend to, but you are the technical people in this area. So Dr. Otuoma, carry on, and the chair, thank you very much for giving me a chance just to tell you, go ahead. We will support the phases that you have outlined in the slide that is currently on the screen. Asanteni.
Chair.
Yes, Dr. Otuoma.
Yes, so my inputs based on what you heard from my director on the 3 phases is, for example, if I start on phase 1, what NACOSTI may do to have these stakeholders sensitized in our workshop, we can write to the stakeholders and we can have our Director General sign the letters to these stakeholders so that they may attend this sensitization workshop. And we've done this before. We've done workshops up to a maximum of 2 days since March 2020, because nowadays when we do workshops, we do them online. So we can write letters to institutions or to stakeholders who this committee may approve. And then if those stakeholders confirm that they will attend, we can schedule, and normally when you do a workshop, it is usually half a day. We start, let's say, at 9, and then at 1 or 2 there, we finish. And then if it must go on the second day, again, the same thing we do from 9 and up to 1. So that's the bit about stakeholder sensitization workshop. And when we do sensitization workshops, our experience is we would have a number of presenters, and then there will be inputs from the attendees. That is as far as the sensitization workshop is concerned in phase 1. And then for phase 2, this is the data collection. If we have a questionnaire and we've developed it, and since we've already sensitized our stakeholders, again, we can get our Director General, we can make a letter for his signature, forwarding the same questionnaire to the stakeholders, who hopefully, now that they have been sensitized, they will be able to give us feedback. And then, of course, this bit of data analysis and report writing, the way this presentation is, it's talking about, for example, the first one, maximum of 3 weeks, the second one, maximum of 6 weeks, and this last one, maximum of 5 weeks. However, if we go back to our initial work plan, you'll realize that this bit of data analysis and report writing will happen next year, that is 2021, while this bit of data collection may happen up to December this year. And then, of course, the sensitization workshop, if we were to send letters, like today, for example, it's 11th. if we were to send letters on 1st September and ask the people we are sending letters to on 1st September that we are having a sensitization workshop, let's say 2 or 3 weeks after 1st September, then that 2 or 3 weeks after 1st September, we can have the sensitization workshop. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. It's good to hear that Nakosti has got the experience and we've heard from your colleague there that you will support this process. So we are quite happy with that, and that we will be able to get the letters from your side to engage stakeholders. So thank you very much. I would like to take us back to if I had Sarah's presentation, and I agree with that we need to try and focus on the objectives, so that at the end of the day, what are we going out there? Why are we talking to people? So if we could try and focus on that for today's for the remaining part of the conversation, it will really add value. And then if we can finish, we can then move on to who do we talk to. But more importantly is, why are we talking to these people? What are the things we're trying to get from them? So my comment would be at this point, let's go back to the objectives and hear if there are any specific comments on these ones. Are there any specific comments on these objectives? And you could start from the first one, socio-technical barriers.
Chair, I think maybe before I comment on objectives, I'd like to make just a general comment on the input. I had a technical challenge, kidogo, so I don't know whether it has been shared in my absence. But so funny as it sounds, when you go outside there, you will realize people do not differentiate between solar for lighting and the solar for water heating purposes. I've heard people in making the two, one means the other. I think in this committee, it's important to see whether we are running with both solar for lighting and solar for water heating, or we are running with one of them, so that as we move forward, we know where we are focused on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waita. Actually, I agree with you. I've seen that also. When you speak to anyone there, they can't between solar thermal and solar PV. However, this committee is on solar power, and I think actually the name of the committee is solar power for domestic use, for households and businesses. So the power here is electrical energy. The output is electrical energy. I don't know whether you meant more like we need to limit, in terms of our scope, we can limit that, or whether you're trying to say that whether we as a committee have a common understanding.
Yes, I'm just saying that we need to have a common understanding and the same leverage that if you are talking about the solar for electrical purposes, that is solar electricity or solar thermal. So if it's solar power, meaning solar electricity, then that's okay. We can move on and to be able to categorize the other aspects of it now. What scope are we considering? So we leave out the solar thermal. Yeah, that's what I meant. And if you are running with both, then we need to be specific right from the beginning, so that as we approach the stakeholders, then we know which one we are dealing with, because there are those who deal with the solar thermal, there are those who also deal with the solar power for electrical, and there are those who deal with both. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waiter. I think so. In our report and our communication to the stakeholders needs to be very clear on that issue. It needs to, at least the letter going out there needs to clearly define this issue, as well as what also Engineer Ohaga was asking earlier. So I think that there is no confusion as to what our focus is. So I agree with you, and thank you so much for that comment.
Chair.
Yes, Dr. Toma.
Yes, I have a contrary opinion. For example, when we say solar power, power can be, for example, used for lighting. The same power can be used for heating water. And also what we've noticed in Kenya, we have people who are installing solar to pump water. And this water which they pump from, let's say, boreholes, they may use that water to irrigate where they're growing, let's say, some horticulture or vegetables just for sale, or they may use the same solar power, solar panels to pump the water, and this water they sell. So it would be nice to hear from Daktari how he would categorize such entrepreneur who has a borehole and is pumping water and is selling a jerry can of 20 liters, for example, for 5 shillings. Or if one goes there with a lorry which can take 3,000 liters, the same entrepreneur is selling that water to that lorry. Or the same person pumping this water has got 2, 3, 4, 5 neighbors who he is supplying water from this borehole. Because such a person, I wouldn't categorize them as, let's say, a big company. But I would like to hear how members present think of such, because we have them in Kenya. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Toma. Dr. White, have you got comments or thoughts on that?
Yeah, maybe I can try to clarify something here, because I think the baseline and what I meant was, you see, solar can be categorized mainly into 2, solar for thermal and solar for electric. Now, when you go deeper to the electric, now you can also define it further. You can produce solar for electric for the sake of pumping. You can develop it. You can generate it for lighting. You can generate it for probably not recommended, of course, but some heating purpose, just like the normal electricity, especially if you have a big system, you know. But when we talk of solar thermal is now basically, in the current context, the energy from the sun heating the absorber, which is also a solar panel of some form, and heating some media like water, and then it circulates. That's one way. Solar thermal can also be, it is directed to a central reflecting body which heats water and generates electricity using that, all right? A centralized system. So here, what I meant is we need to be specific solar power. When you talk about solar power, are we talking about we are generating electricity now for the various businesses and works and household use or industry, just as the Daktari has described? Are we also combining it with the direct heat from the sun, warming a media, and we use it for domestic purposes in our houses and industries? That's exactly where I was alluding to. So it is about the way it is converted now, and for the particular uses that I wanted us to have a distinction about. Otherwise, we have seen businesses and households generating power and generating some small revenue in the rural setting. Wananyoa watu kinyozi, the others are charging people for small coins like that. That's okay. But basically, the power generated now is for electrical purposes, and now it is applied in diverse areas. That's what I meant. I hope I'm clear, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Whiter. Shall we just say that solar photovoltaic, because it really is it's photovoltaic, which converts directly to electrical energy. You know, maybe that would be the other way of clearly communicating this.
Yeah, probably yes.
Okay, and if I could also kindly request you, Dr. Whiter, you could spare some time just to document a 2-pager, then we can always take it and put it in the report, especially in terms of the scope of our approach. I expect this kind of question coming also from all the stakeholders we will be talking to, and maybe if we have something written which you can share with them, it will help to clarify what we are doing. So thank you very much. Are there any other comments from other? We haven't heard from many other institutions, so I don't want to pick out names, but I want to welcome the other institutions which are here to please say something. It's open. We are all encouraged to speak up so that it's more consultative. Please, if you haven't said something today, please go ahead and say something.
Dr. Anditi has her hand up.
Okay, Dr. Anditi, please go ahead. So we can't hear you. I still can't hear you. Can anyone else hear, Dr. Anditi?
No, I cannot hear her. But her hand is up.
I see Humphrey is trying to say something. Maybe Humphrey, you could go first as Dr. Anditi tries to sort out what's happening on the other side.
Humphrey is talking, but we can't hear anything.
Yes, I don't know whether he's driving because it sounds like there's some background noise, but we cannot hear anything. Humphrey, do you want to try again?
I think he's saying he wants to sort out his microphone.
We cannot hear you. Your microphone is probably not okay.
Wow. Technological challenges. In the meantime, is there anyone else who would like to say something from the other institutions?
Chair, can I ask something?
Please proceed.
I'm not too sure whether I saw COFEC as one of the stakeholders that we will be talking to, because you remember even last week, I don't know whether they were there. I seem not to have seen COFEC.
Sarah, can we add COPEC here? Did you have them already?
That is critical, Chair, because the end game here is the consumer, is the Wanjiku, and you had even the DG is talking about the consumer, and if you cannot, if you can't have their interest here, I think it becomes an issue even in setting up the policy.
Thank you, engineer. That is well noted. I've also put my notes here, and I'll do that. Humphrey, there seems to be some noise from your end, but we cannot hear you. You could kindly mute your microphone, and then you could try. I don't know why we cannot hear you. Dr. Anditi, are you now able to speak?
Hello, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I think there's a problem with my microphone, but I've managed to sort it out. I'd like to say thank you to every member for their contribution, first of all. My thoughts were on the first objective, on the socio-technical barriers to the technology, resource-based, environmental, and social barriers. I think that this can, the four objectives here can be the definitive objectives, the main objectives for our project or the research that we are going to do. But under the first objective, I would like to suggest that we have sub-objectives for each objective so that we can clearly identify the main aspects that we can work on for each objective. And on the first one, some of the issues that I was thinking that we could look into are awareness strategies, so that to keep people sensitized and aware of what our projects, this project would entail, and what kind of improvement on their livelihoods do they expect by taking up solar PV for households or even for businesses. And we could look into advertisements and things like those. Then my other thoughts were on how we could support the poor, who are like the most vulnerable to energy insecurities. And there are certain incentives that are always given to the poor when it comes to interventions such as this. And I would like to imagine that we would also adopt some of these interventions for the poor, given that the project would be cross-cutting across different social status. And I would just like to think that this is something we should really consider, given that, as I mentioned, they're the most vulnerable to energy insecurities, and having solar would be like such an improvement to their livelihoods. Another thing that I would like to point out on this social technical barriers, as Sarah had pointed out in part of the research, some of this include gender empowerment. And I would like to mention that we would need strategies, because gender is such a main issue when it comes to how energy is consumed at household level. And I would think that for this objective, therefore, it's important that we consider how we can empower, because as I mentioned in the last meeting, that energy interventions such as this, from our point of view, we understand the importance of having solar PV, and this is not knowledge that is available for everyone, that everyone has access to, and some people don't really know what kind of improvement this could have on their lives. And at household level, gender plays a really major role in how energy is taken up and even consumed, decision-making factors, and who does what. And therefore, I suggest that we look into empowerment strategies, so that in the communities that people do not really understand the impact of this project or interventions in their lives, then we can have these strategies to help in transition. And generally, we also need an overall transition strategy, so that, because by adopting solar, then people either they would be stacking with other energies that they already are using, the conventional ones, or it could be radical, that they just adopt solar and with time, if possible, maintain the use of solar and do away with other sources of energy that are probably not as sustainable. It is therefore, again, I'd like to emphasize that we should look into transition strategies that are effective. Yeah, those are the kind of contributions I had for the first objective. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Anditi. Very solid comment there. And they think the character was not just the first one, you know. They also think the characters, because if you're not on also on policy at the end of the day. So and the idea of transition, because all those are already using something, they must now move to solar or something like that. Policy support they would.
Chair, you are there. Looks like Chair has also gotten an issue, but while we are waiting for him, on the issue of transition, as presented, as explained by Dr. Christy Anditi, I've observed something I would like to share with us. I've seen people first, for example, have Kenya Power put electricity in their houses. So I've seen a person who has put solar, And because he has put solar, he had to do another wiring different from the wiring of Kenya Power. So if I got Dr. Anditi correct, would the transition be like with time? You realize that, for example, initially you had Kenya Power and it was supplying electricity for lighting, for maybe heating water, and then you come and put solar, and then you stop using Kenya Power to heat your water. And then you realize actually you can eventually do away with Kenya Power. Is that what you call transition? Eventually you may even use it for appliances like fridge and even cooking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Otoma. Dr. Anditi, have you got a comment on that? That's a very interesting response, Dr. Otoma.
Yes, Chair. Well, when I was referring to transitions, yes, that is one of the aspects of transitions that I was referring to, because at the end of the day, if people were to take up this solar, then some would like to transition completely from using what they had if it proves to be economically viable, and if it proves to be more sustainable to them. Then there are those who will completely change to using solar and leaving what they were using before. And also there's another aspect of transition that I'm also looking at when it comes to illegal electricity consumption that is widespread across the country. Something like this would help to mitigate such illegal consumption of electricity, and therefore encouraging a transition into the use of solar once it's successfully put up as an intervention would help to mitigate such illegal consumption, which is also like derailing the efforts of Kenya Power to make electricity accessible across the country. So it's also in terms of mitigating illegal consumptions, and also people just transitioning into better energies. And because at the end of the day, we also said that if the energy that is produced at household or by the businesses is more than the 1 mega gigabyte. Okay,
Megawatt.
it's then the excess would be fed into the grid. So I think there is a balance that would be created there that really doesn't affect negatively the Kenya Power. Yeah. And just to clarify something, sorry, I'm not a doctor yet, but surely I will be in a few years. I'm just undertaking my doctoral studies. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. We're wishing you well. That's why we are already calling you that.
Thank you.
That's very interesting. And I think one real challenge which Dr. Otoma said was these people, the issue of households, even business wiring differently, solar and wiring differently Kenya Power, typically because either solar is DC power and therefore it's got a different requirement, or because they want to separate some loads and use it on solar and there are others use it on Kenya Power. The real challenge, maybe the committee can also provide some policy guidelines for the government to consider. Any other comments?
I just want to test whether I'm audible now.
Is that Humphrey? You're loud and clear. Yeah.
I'm audible now.
Very much so. Please go ahead.
I'm going to throw away this computer and only be working with this mobile phone. Sorry, thank you. Now, two things earlier on, which Sarah had talked about. Weather conditions are also very important matters to discuss, but issues to deal with the data on meteorology, it is also very difficult to obtain, unless maybe we find a way of getting one of them to join us. and then through some form of orderly information tracking, we can get some information for meteorology. That is for high business value solar power. But if you look at what we are trying also to go into is into households. And I always look at Ghana, the situation when I was there and we were discussing issues with the solar. The community people prepared some land and they formed a circle and they made the solar panels, and that's why they were able to get solar power from that, which some of it they could use for heating and the other one for lighting, and it was metered so that anybody who was using it was paying some money. And that was a better way of organization to do business and also to use the solar power in a more efficient way at the local level. And then also the issues to do with the maintenance. You know, with the time, the level of solar uptake by those panels goes down. So when you have got a group of people having solar panels laid down properly, then maintenance also becomes very effective. Then when you have got single households, and then you have these technicians coming in to repair or to do some maintenance, and these technicians want to come more often and make money. So in most cases, when you want maintenance to be done in your own house, it might be not be easy because this guy will just play around so that he can come back tomorrow again. And that's why some people end up throwing away the solar panels. I'll end up there for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Humphrey. There, finally could hear you. We have taken note of those comments. Is there anyone else with a rejoinder or a different opinion or a comment, different comment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I have two. One is for our future Dr. Anditi. We don't worry, Dr. Anditi. I started calling me doctor when I didn't even have a master's degree. And he made me eventually get a master's and a PhD. But my comment, especially when you talked of illegal connection, now that we have Engineer Eric Ohaga here, he may correct me again. For example, I'm more conversant with big baseload systems like nuclear power, and I've been nuclear power stations which generate above 1,000 megawatts electricity. That is, they generate that amount of electricity at the station. Now, what goes to the grid is not that 1,000 megawatts. For example, if it's 1,000 megawatts plant, or if it's 1,500 megawatts plant, it's a percentage which may go up to 90 plus. So there's always an amount of electricity the generator uses, like the nuclear power plants I've been to. They would use, let's say if it was generating 1,000 megawatts, you'll find that just in the plant itself, they are using up or in excess of, that is, again, if I use cumulatively, 50 megawatts. And that electricity, what I found interesting is that the power companies of those countries would actually build them. But something else about power losses, now after they have generated that electricity and put it on the grid, first it will be transmitted, and the transmission lines, they usually carry a higher voltage. So the voltage, again, what I used to see would be things to do with 11,000 volts. So they would talk of 11 kilovolts or something like that. And then when they arrive at our areas, like now in Kenya, we have Ketraco doing transmission, there are losses. So when it arrives at Kenya Power, who are now doing the distribution, so Kenya Power will now pick that electricity at that very high voltage. And when it arrives, let's say, in the vicinity of where I use, it is stepped down from something like 415 volts to the one in my house, which is maybe to 40 volts. So again, there are losses. So I hope when you talk of illegal connection, you're not talking of those losses. There are always losses from the point of generation to the point where it is consumed. So if you are talking of illegal connections which are against the law, I've read papers made by people from your group, and the picture I got is that in Kenya, for example, our informal settlements, we have what I may refer to as cartels. So these cartels sort of control the power distribution in our informal settlements, what we are calling slums. So these cartels, when you go in our informal settlements as a tenant, they are the ones who connect electricity to you. I'm not sure if our solar power for houses and businesses advisory committee may indulge into such, because if those are the losses you are talking about, those ones may not be in the domain of things which are legal, because what NACOSTI normally advises on issues, science, technology, and innovation are things which are already legal. Like, for example, if you're talking of the power losses from the generator to the person using electricity, that one we can talk about. And the losses, I don't know in Kenya now, but in those countries I used to do inspection in, the losses could be up to 18%. So if I use simple arithmetic, let's say the losses are 20%, then that station which is making 1,000, let's say, megawatts of electricity from nuclear, what eventually arrives at the consumers, if you are to follow it, would be something like 800 megawatts. The other 18% is lost. It's lost because of systems and other things to do with electrical. So I would like you to, but maybe the committee may consider whether we want to dwell on illegal connections as concerns cartels controlling those illegal connections in informal settlements. And then my second rejoinder is from what Humphrey Lumadede of Kirdi has said about metrology data. The meteorological department actually now has many competitors. Kenya Agricultural Livestock Organization nowadays can give you daily statements on the weather in whichever part of Kenya you are in. So much as we may want to have a meteorological people on our committee, I would say we don't need them, because we can get the information of the meteorology in any area in Kenya by accessing the system of Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, because they do it and they get informations like if there's going to be rainfall and the temperatures of that particular area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Toma. And maybe briefly, Anditi, you could comment very briefly, because time looks like we put 20 minutes to.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I would just like to clarify that, okay, from my perspective of things, I was looking at the solar PV is now that they are at initial, from the very basic installation of a solar PV in a house or for household usage. It's on an individual basis, like you would purchase a solar PV and have it installed on your house. Well, what I was looking into, Dr. Otuoma, is that such an intervention would be a way to mitigate, to lessen the illegal electricity connections for informal settlement dwellers. Because if there was a way that they could actually use solar instead of having the illegally tapped electricity, then this would be beneficial. At a very basic level, that is what I meant to say. that adopting solar would be actually a way to lessen illegal electricity connections. But of course, the strategies would differ, especially for informal settlements, because what has prevented the success of solar in informal settlements is insecurities, where your solar PV can be uninstalled anytime and someone takes it away. But we have looked into proposals such as communal solar systems, where people can then communally generate solar and have it transmitted into their household for use. So I was just looking into that as a way of lessening illegal connections and having people have another option instead of the illegal electricity that they are using.
Thank you for clarification. And for the other side of the losses Dr. Tom was referring to, in terms of transaction, also that's why we advocate for this kind of technologies, because we generate and consume at the same point. So there is no transmission or distribution losses per se. So hence the reason why we advocate for these technologies. Allow me to proceed and hear from anyone else who has not spoken today. Floor is open, please. Someone is speaking.
Can I say something?
Please do. Well, you can say.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment actually on this illegal connection and even the losses. And I want to support Nditi on this. One is because I'm happy that Dr. Tuoma is talking about the losses. What you generate is not what you sell. And currently in Kenya, we are talking about 23% losses. And out of these 23%, 13% is commercial losses. 9% is what you cannot do about because those are technical losses associated with the lines, transmission lines and distribution lines. But the 13% is as a result of theft. And this theft is coming from those informal settlements. Leave alone the theft. Actually, if you go to the informal settlements with those cartels, they don't care about even the infrastructure there. They don't even care about the transformers that supply them. And they can overload those transformers to the tune of them failing. So if this advisory can go a long way in making those kind of reduction, first of all, in terms of reducing the commercial losses, because the Kenya Power does not get those revenues because the cartels actually get the revenues. And this would actually go a long way, even having the buy-in of the utilities and also the buy-in of the ministry. So that's a critical component, that if that could happen, if there's a central metering system in the informal setup so that those households are then powered from the solar systems, and that means they are not then connected to the grid, and therefore that means they will not be able to steal, and that will end up in reducing the commercial losses that we are talking about, which are in the very high, and they're actually pulling down the utility. The other thing that I want to talk about is on Lubadede, talking about the data. And the data for solar is available. It's available on the World Global Solar Atlas. That one is available. You can Google it. You will get it for the world. You can Google it. You can get it for Kenya. And the values in various parts of this country where insolation is high, where there's no insolation of solar. So if you require that information, I think we can avail it. I have some data also on the World Solar Atlas and Kenya Solar Atlas for your use. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jinawaga, for clarifying, and your comments are solid. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else with a hand up? So while someone else thinks about a comment, I also want to make a comment now as Strathmore, as chair. I noted from the presentation that you mentioned storage only once. Let's bear in mind that also, aside from the issues of us thinking about feeding solar power to the grid, excess power, let's bear in mind that also the grid is very unstable. And if once we speak to households, we will know how many of them install solar power just as to try and stabilize the power supply in their homes. And in that case, then storage is very important, because solar PV on its own, without storage, cannot provide stable power. So I think we also have to, aside from promoting feeding excess power to the grid, we could also promote feeding excess power to batteries, which can provide power subsequently to the household in case of a blackout or in the evening hours. I think that my comment there would be that the committee we need to consider this and also try and champion this, because solar PV, photovoltaic is mature, but solar storage is the one which is lagging behind, because it's been more expensive, it's been more difficult to install, or more prone to failures than even the PV side of things. And therefore, we should have a keener look on storage. And then the other comment I had was on the comment you made about local businesses versus foreign-owned businesses. We see a lot of, especially the vendors and the companies who are doing the business of solar, being foreign-owned. If you look at the Pico PV side of Pico PV, the small solar home lanterns, a bulk of the market leaders are actually foreign-owned. And therefore, the question becomes, how do we promote more local businesses who can actually, in a way, make money from being in the solar business? And similar thing we see on the solar business side, a lot of the companies installing, designing, they're called EPCs. Actually, a bulk of them are foreign-owned. And therefore, maybe the committee could also look at promoting local companies in this space, because there's no point of opening up our homes and business for solar, yet the money which is being used and the money which is generated goes back abroad. Those are my two comments for consideration. I wonder if there's a rejoinder or someone has a different opinion, or someone has a different comment also.
Yes, Madam Chair, maybe I can make a comment on the first objective, that is on social technical barriers. Maybe the slide can be projected there. And I think basically I can consider the second objective. Yes, the second objective, which was where you've written down, you have broken this into the objectives. Where you have broken the first one into objectives. The first objective is to collect to obtain this data on solar. The previous one, yes? The previous one.
Are you talking about technical environmental? Or, okay, there we are.
Technical environmental, sorry. Technical environmental, yes, that's it. My focus is on the second objective, that is to assess the design and performance of solar PV. And my comment on this one is it's very wide, and it involves some bit of computation and data taking at the site of the place. So I was thinking that if we have to keep it as an objective, then we have to define exactly to what level we shall be going into. The design of the system and the performance, to what depth shall we go into, so that we save on time and also we are able to achieve our objective. That was my concept, because performance of the system, it involves performance ratio, financial accessibility, payback, blah, 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 and all that business. So I thought in this one here, we need to define exactly what specifications or what details we shall be considering when we are assessing the design and the performance of the system. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waita. Yes, very sorry comment there. It's very broad, and there's just need to break it down further. And the more I hear from the committee, the more I hear that looks like technical issues are not technical issues in terms of design, data availability, whether technology works is not really the issue here. So maybe there'll be less, if I hear correctly, there'll be less focus on this first one and more focus on the next three objectives. If my comments, if I've understood correctly, what how we are discussing here today.
Chair.
Yes, Dr. Otomo.
Yes, I would like to play the devil's advocate again on two issues. There's the issue which you mentioned about, much as we are talking of solar power, the fact is that if you do not have a storage, that is now the batteries. And if the batteries are not reliable, then you may not go beyond, for example, lighting or charging appliances like telephone or maybe a radio. But if you have good batteries, then you may actually now what Dr. Nditi was talking about, transiting, or that may be possible. And then what Dr. Waita has said about the second objective, that is to assess the design and performance of solar PV. Actually, this one is extremely wide because in Kenya right now, we have so many suppliers of PV systems. And just as an illustration, yesterday there was a PhD progress report of one student in the Department of Physics. And this PhD candidate has taken 3 solar systems, and 2 of those 3 solar systems are from the same manufacturer, and 1 is from a different manufacturer. And actually just checking on the performance of those 3 systems, because normally you go to the market and they tell you this solar panel is 50 watts or 100 watts or 200 watts. But when you actually measure, and on a good day, not like today when it is cloudy, when it is clear blue skies, you will rarely actually measure that 50, 100 or 200 watts. You'll always measure less. And even when you are measuring, and even when you took the time ranges, let's say from 8 to 4 or 5 or even 6, the output will not, that is if you draw a graph, you will get maybe a peak at 1, 2, 3 there. So I don't know how this committee would consider this second proposed objective, because this is literally a PhD study. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Otoma. Indeed, it's very wide and very involving. And maybe one suggestion there could be, as we could just hear from the users as to the experience of the solar systems they have used, whether there were any challenges in terms of the system being properly designed or properly used, properly meeting the needs of the user. That could be one option of, I guess, incorporating this comment into our. But Sarah, what was your thinking around this? Maybe Sarah could provide more clarity.
Maybe before Sarah speaks, maybe Chairman, I can say we can limit ourselves to the type of system that has been installed in the place, whether it is hybrid, whether it is purely solar, and we limit ourselves in terms of performance. We can limit ourselves to when the system was installed and whether there are any problems and whether it is meeting the needs of the client, as you say. I think we can just limit ourselves to that and probably take the details of the size of the system. Thank you.
Thank you, and agreed. Looking at the clock now, so we are 6 minutes to midday. Dr. Otoma, was the intention to end at midday? Shall we try and wrap up?
Yes, Chair. And the way I would propose we wrap up is now that we've discussed the tentative second deliverable presented by Kirdi exhaustively, we may have this rewritten such that on the date of the next meeting, which we will agree as a final bit in our meeting today, we can have that presentation. And when we'll be having that presentation, as I had explained on the phase 1, that is preparation / planning, we can agree when we have the second meeting, when we'll have this presentation as incorporating our inputs, we would agree on the day we can have this stakeholder sensitization workshop, and we'll have agreed on who are the stakeholders, and those stakeholders, immediately after that next meeting, we can dispatch letters to them, inviting them to a sensitization workshop on a date which, again, this committee will agree on. And what I would suggest, again, going forward, is that that day of the sensitization workshop, we may have presentations by each one of us who's present here. So for example, the people in climate change, that is Dr. Molo, Dr. Anditi, they may want to talk about, during the workshop, the sensitization workshop, about the experiences in, for example, informal settlement and how they take power. People from NUPEA may want to talk about what they know about electricity transmission and the expertise. And because their mandate is actually to do issues research. And of course, CRIDI, their role is very clear. They may even be the ones to present the presentation they will have done in the next meeting. And of course, University of Nairobi and yourself in Strathmore and Kengen may also make presentations, so that in the next meeting, when we are agreeing on the day to invite this to have the sensitization workshop, we can also agree on a tentative program for the workshop, if it will be a half day for 1 day or half day for 2 days. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Otoma. So if I understand your comments correctly, at this point we could on one hand try and focus on preparing for the workshop and getting people to inviting people for this, and on the other hand, while we prepare for the workshop, also keep going ahead with how to engage stakeholders. Or will that be discussed in this workshop? Will we discuss now how we plan to, or is this already part of the engagement? Isn't it? It is actually already part of the engagement.
Chair.
Yes.
If we have another meeting, let's say 2 or 3 weeks from today, we can have this report refined such that now it will be the second deliverable done. Just like, for example, when Dr. Molo made her first presentation, it was more like a preliminary one, and we subjected it to similar critique and discussions as we have done today. And then when she presented the second one, remember, even it took a shorter time such that we were able now to dwell on what should go into this second deliverable. And now that this second deliverable has been presented and we have now given our feedback and we've deliberated on it, so when we have the next meeting, we will have now a final deliverable as agreed by all of us, because this one we have given our views and our critiques and our suggestions to it. So the next meeting, which may be 2 or 3 weeks from today, as depending on on our decision, is where now KIRDI will make a presentation of this second deliverable, and the output of that meeting will be, we will decide on a day for a sensitization workshop. And this sensitization workshop, we shall know who will be our stakeholders to that workshop. And those stakeholders are the ones we shall write to, inviting them to a sensitization workshop. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, understood, and it's a very good way forward. Sarah, maybe we want to hear from you. Is that how much time do you need for this? 2 weeks, 3 weeks? How do you feel? Are you there, Sarah? Or anyone from KIRDI?
Hello.
Yes, Sarah, please go ahead. We can hear you.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't get some of the comments from members. I think I had network issues at one point. I don't know how we are going to handle that. But then, what I feel we should do is to exhaust on the objective. We really need to refine, or if it's possible, maybe we can tell each person or maybe group to tackle a particular objective, so that they can forward to me and we refine as KIRDI. I don't know whether that one is possible. Like you assign the technological to a certain group of people to go and check into it deeply and forward to us, sieve it further, filter it, and give us the feedback. Then now, after maybe 2-3 weeks, as Dr. Otuoma said, we shall have the final decision to make on those objectives.
Okay.
And
there's another way of doing this. Copy your question. So this question has been recorded, so you can hear the record, the meeting again at your own free time. And it could be that you could, taking the inputs from everyone else, attempt again just to polish up the objectives and then recirculate it. Say within a week, just circulate it with the specific comments or questions, and then we could give our input on email. Also on our side at Strathmore, we will be quite happy to support you to structure it in a way that has been discussed today. And I wonder if there's any other institution who would be willing to come in and maybe we have a separate task, not even task force, separate working committee just on the objectives to help Kirdi beef it up more. Maybe that could be one way, of doing it. Otherwise, it's what you have said also, that we could allocate the objectives to different institutions. But I fear that it will divert and it will go to a different way, that they are not linked. My thoughts are that let it be under one institution, and then we will take input from specific people who can help us to improve it further.
Okay, I agree with you. It's okay. We can work with you, and thanks so much for accepting to work with us. So I have a proposal again on maybe way forward. Is there a way we can open a WhatsApp for easy communication instead of just waiting for feedback from email address, from email?
Okay, I have no objection. We could hear from Dr. Otuoma on how NACOSTI has dealt with this before. Dr. Otuoma, is it in order to have a WhatsApp group according to your policies there?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, much earlier, Dr. Waita suggested a WhatsApp, and all what I explained is that if you set up one, we will join. You be the administrator. But otherwise, from my end, like for example, this meeting, we've recorded it, we'll share it, and emails. I always acknowledge emails. Because the email etiquettes requires that if you send me an email, even if I do not have any comment, I should at least say noted or acknowledge. So for me, adding WhatsApp, I have no issue, only that you be the administrator. So Dr. Waita once suggested it, it never took off. Now I hear Sarah suggesting it. Please, you start one and invite us, and I will be happy to give you my number. Thank you. My number actually is on my email every time I reply to you. The Safaricom number. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I hear you. Any other comment there?
Yeah. Just saying that we were still forming the group, so we're waiting for the call number that will be included. So please, Chair, go ahead. Thank you.
So, Dr. Waita, you're taking the lead in this, in the WhatsApp group.
Yeah, I can do it, provided I have the numbers. How will I get the numbers for each one of us?
We could share on email. Otherwise, if you could just let us know your number now. What's your number? Then we can also.
Yes. 722. Then you can share 722. 83. 8140.
Thank you. So if you're going to join the group, please just drop Dr. Waita a message and he can add you. I think
I'm putting
it's okay. Just
722.
Yes.
83 8140.
Could you just put it in the chat?
Yes, immediately. So there it comes. There it is on the chat.
We are really out of time. I'm sure people are busy and have got other appointments. So unless there is any pressing issue, I would like to thank you all for the successful meeting today. And
so what is the date of the next meeting? Just that for me.
Very important. Sorry, I'm in a rush. Shall we say? What do people feel about the next meeting? Shall we aim for 25th, or at least we still do one in August? Or 26th would be my comment. 25 or 26th, but I'm happy to hear also what other people think.
26th, 27th, I have scheduled workshops, taking me a whole day.
26, 27. So we aim for 25.
25 is okay. 25 is okay.
Also on my side is okay. Anyone else? Or shall we agree on it? Sarah, it will be your day, so maybe you need to comment that you'll be available.
Is it after 2 weeks or 3 weeks? I'm not so sure about the time frame.
Sorry?
That would be after 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
2 weeks. That will be after 2 weeks.
Okay. Let's go to the third one because I'm likely to travel for a certain function. 3 weeks, the third week.
Then we can take 2nd September, it will be a Wednesday. Or 1st September, it will be a Tuesday, whichever day I'm free.
I will be fine with that.
Okay, let's agree then on the 2nd September.
2nd September works.
Okay, thank you everyone.
So I'll stop recording. I thank you, Chair, for your time.
Thank you all. Speak to you on 2nd September. Bye.